9715.
Thank you for checking out this week's episode of Bigfoot for Breakfast, home of the mysterious and the macabre, where we sit in the studio every week challenging conventional thought. We are your hosts, Samantha Carter
and Sarah Jones.
Don't forget to push that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a rating and a review so we know how you like the show. If this is your first time listening, I'd like to start by saying you're welcome.
You're welcome.
And make sure that you go back and check out some of our previous episodes. Follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter for opportunities to win free stuff and the occasional meme, live video, or whatever pops into our heads.
They're great memes.
We do find some pretty good memes.
They're fantastic.
If you have any questions or comments for us, you can email us at bigfootforbreakfast@outlook.com, send us a message on Facebook, or you can even call us at 641-812-2635 and leave us a voicemail, and we'll even play it on our next show. The topic of the week has been on the back burner for quite a while, and we finally decided to go ahead and give you Bigfoot for Breakfast take on dun 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 the Mothman.
I'm gonna reverb that.
I'd also like to preface this discussion by saying that if you haven't seen many moth memes, you need to. I came across quite a few in my research, and there are some pretty funny ones.
She came across them.
I came across them.
It was very Elmer Fudd of her.
It's moth season.
So if you're unaware of the possible existence of Mothman, which if you're into any of this sort of thing, you have to be living under a rock to possibly be unaware of this, you might be missing out on one of the creepier American folk legends out there. This particular cryptid, not unlike the other cryptid legends out there, opens up a great number of questions, which presents the complicated task of separating fact from fiction. Is any of it real?
Are any of us real?
She's gonna get all existential.
Check out our Matrix episode.
Yeah. You'll have to decide what to believe for yourself.
We also want to take a few minutes to let you in on some recommendations that we have for some other shows. We know a few that may pique your interest. The Question Everything guys, Semper Fi Rob, Sean, and the Mick host a show where they pick a different topic every week that usually seems to coincide with issues that we seem to be facing at the time as American people, and they discuss it. They usually do a Facebook Live every Saturday, and then they'll post the edited version to the podcast platforms a few days later. They also take call-ins from guests who have anything to say regarding the topic that week. So if you can relate in some way or have an opinion, get on their Facebook Live and give them a call and chat them up for a while.
MWP is another show that you guys should check out. Chach and Josh are funny and their conversations flow really well. They talk a lot about movies, wrestling, politics, whatever else comes up through the episode with a lot of jokes and a lot of great personality. So check them out. You won't regret it.
The Kensington Corner with Tom and Jeff is another great show. They tackle the problems of the world one thing at a time, but they focus a lot on health and overall well-being, both mentally and physically, from a man's standpoint. And we found their show to be really interesting because they aren't afraid to really get into the everyday struggles that guys face, especially with mental health and stress. It's a really honest show, and one of them is a veteran, so they promote various causes associated with the mental health of veterans as well, which we think is incredible because it's a very important topic and our nation's veterans don't get the love and support that they deserve. Any conversation that can be had about how to improve that is fantastic.
From what we could find, it sounds like the earliest sighting of this cryptid was on November of 1966. And it took place in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. 5 men were digging a grave and they spotted a low-flying humanoid figure over their heads. The men described what they saw as a gray man-like creature flying with a 10-foot wingspan and 7 feet tall with large eyes, aka a monster bird.
Monster bird.
Right.
On November 15th in the same town, 2 young married couples had a similarly abnormal experience while driving near an old abandoned TNT plant. Roger and Linda Scarberry and another couple, Steve and Mary Millette, reported to their local deputy sheriff Millard Halstead, seeing something which they described as having 2 large red eyes which reflected the light from the car's headlights. They described that the creature was, quote, shaped like a man, but bigger, maybe 6 or 7 feet tall with big wings folded against its back. Linda detailed that you could see the muscles on its legs. When the creature began moving towards the door of the factory, the couples panicked and quickly drove away. But that was not the end of their encounter. Shortly after speeding away from the factory, they reportedly saw the same creature on the hillside by a large billboard as they went around a curve. At this point, the witnesses stated that the creature spread its large wings, ascending into the air, and began its pursuit of their vehicle, which was moving at speeds of greater than 100 miles per hour in Roger's 57 Chevy, trying to get away from the giant bird.
Do 57 Chevys even go 100 miles an hour?
What the story says.
Okay.
What the witnesses said.
It could be. I'm not a
Go
car.
grease lightning.
Go grease lightning. I'm not a car person, so I don't know. Maybe.
They reported that the bird kept right up with us and that it followed them down Highway 62 right to the city limits. Mary Millette described that it squeaked like a big mouse.
Make the sound.
Flying rat bat.
Yes. Why didn't they call it that? Why did they go to Mothman?
Oh, we'll get into the name thing later.
Okay. There's a reason.
You'll enjoy that.
Every description that I've seen, it sounds nothing like a moth.
The creature disappeared into a field as the vehicle made it to town. They reported seeing the body of a large dog lying on the side of the road near the conclusion of their high-speed chase. But as they looked for it again on the way back out of town, the dog was gone. Perhaps their pursuer settled for a less lively sneaky snack. Date night was definitely way more eventful than these two couples had ever anticipated. However, they were not the only group to witness the bird-like creature in that town on that night. Another group of 4 citizens claimed 3 different sightings of the creature that night.
At about 10:30 on the same night, later that day, sorry.
One could surmise.
You and your surmising. A local building contractor named Newell Partridge was watching television when out of nowhere, the screen went dark and then a weird pattern filled the screen.
Sounds rather extraterrestrial, doesn't it?
Sometimes. Suddenly, Mr. Partridge heard a large screeching sound from outside of the house.
It was a loud sound, not a large sound.
Oh, yes.
Point of order.
It was loud, not large. He reported that the noise then raised in pitch and then stopped. It sounded like a generator winding up, he described. At that time, his dog, Bandit, who was on the front porch, began to howl out. So he went outside to check things out. Has he never watched literally every scary movie ever?
Literally every scary movie ever.
I can't even say anything, though, because just the other night, my dogs were barking, and I ran outside and chased foxes away at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Let's go investigate the strange noise.
Well, I looked outside and saw the fox, and it was trying to get my chicken.
I guess I did that the other night without thinking about it. We kept hearing this strange noise out in the hospital. And it's creepy there anyway, and it's totally haunted.
Did you ever see the Halloween movie where Michael Myers is in the hospital? You don't go. Don't go.
So there was a strange noise, and I just jumped out of my chair and took off running out to the atrium to try to see if I could find it. And then I was like, wait a second, what the F am I doing by myself? But luckily there was a EMT that decided he would follow closely behind, just in case, behind me. So he wouldn't be the first one to get killed.
So you were bait.
But yes, I was bait, but he would see it.
Right. There'd be a witness. Was he Snapchatting it to people?
No.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, he goes outside to find his dog facing the hay barn, which is about 150 yards away. So he shines his handy-dandy flashlight toward the barn to see what old Bandit was worked up about. What did he see but 2 red circles? It's a circle. Anyway, they looked like bicycle reflectors. Or perhaps they were freaking winged demon eyes. Clearly, the eyes did not belong to any animal that he knew of, but being the experienced hunting dog that he was, Bandit, who was very protective of his territory, as most dogs are, took off across the yard in attack mode towards the red glowing eyes. His owner called for him to stop, but he didn't. So, Partridge ran back to the house to grab a gun, but was too scared to go back outside. And I don't blame him one bit. I probably wouldn't have gone out to investigate in the first place. That's a lie. I definitely would have.
I think I would have if I had a gun, because I'd want my dog back, man.
So, despite the terrifying ordeal and the missing dog, he went to bed with his gun propped up beside him, as any reasonable person would, only to wake the next morning to find that Bandit was still gone.
No.
Bandit was still missing 2 days after the incident when Partridge read about the Scarberry Millette sighting in the paper. The detail, which was most upsetting to him in the article, was the reported sighting of the dead dog on the highway, which of course made him think of his poor Bandit. As it happens, poor Bandit was never seen again.
I think I would have went and got my dog and then Forrest Gumped it back to the house as fast as I could, and that would have been the end of it.
But if your dog's in angry attack mode, are you going to pick it up and carry it?
Yeah, because I did once when it was getting a raccoon.
Johnny Utah's not that vicious. And I don't know how big Bandit was, but the people who saw it on the highway reported it was a very large dog.
Okay, but Johnny Utah is vicious when he's mad. Don't discount Johnny Utah's viciousness.
His stubby little studio dog legs. Anyway.
In his mind, he's very upset when he sees something.
He could get carried off by a large bird.
Easily. But then he looks so small, but then it'd start to carry him and they'd be like, wow, he's fatter than I
He is pretty fat.
He's so heavy. Okay, anyway. Our boy, Robert Stack. Our boy, Robert Stack, covered this in a brief stint on his show, Unsolved Mysteries, in which he tells the previous stories with intense reenactments and interviews from the witnesses. He also talks about sightings on The Next Night by Marcella Bennett and her 4-year-old daughter as they were leaving her brother's house. Marcella stated that she was walking to her car, carrying the toddler, when she saw the mysterious creature. She and her brother fled back into the house, toddler in tow, to escape what she described as a 6-foot-tall man with feathers instead of skin. The creature loitered outside of the house, but then disappeared.
Just a few days later, Tom Urey was driving near the TNT area. This time, however, it was daylight. Urey's account of the creature details seeing what he thought was a helicopter initially, but upon closer look was a giant bird circling around his car, spiraling downwards toward the car before flying off and disappearing.
I imagine this being like a toilet effect. Like it was, Is that what he's talking about?
Well, if you think about what hawks do, they circle around the objects and then they slowly descend toward it and then they scarf it down.
During this time frame, livestock and other animals in the area would also be found dead, reportedly with the heart or other random organs missing.
I did forget to mention, but there were some that it sounds like were just exsanguinated.
Like cattle mutilations. Is that what you're talking about?
This is me blinking my eyes at you.
Yeah.
And telling you to carry on.
Okay, we're going to apparently get to that later. But there seems to have been far more nefarious things going on, if you ask me.
Nefarious or nefarious?
Nefarious.
I say nefarious.
Well, I guess. Listeners, nefarious or nefarious?
Weigh in.
Nefarious.
Okay.
Sightings of mysterious visitors dressed in black bring an even more eerie feel to the stories pouring out of Point Pleasant, West Virginia during this period of time. If you recall, sightings of these men in black are common in times like this, and they have made an appearance in other subjects we've covered, such as the Black-Eyed Children. If you have not heard that episode and you love being scared to walk to your car or answer your door, you should definitely give it a listen. Black-Eyed Children.
Totally.
It is freaking weird.
After doing the reading and recording that episode, I seriously was scared to look out my windows for like 2 weeks.
Well, join the club, because for like 2 years before that entire episode, I talked about the Black-Eyed Children and being scared of them. Horrifying.
I didn't think about them as much until we actually did the episode.
They've pretty much been in the back of my mind for a long time.
So, it sounds like 8 additional sightings were reported in the span of only 3 days after the first, including 2 volunteer firefighters who said that they saw what they described as a very large bird with large red eyes. These accounts brought about pandemonium for the small town of Point Pleasant as they drew national attention and news coverage, which of course means an army wearing press passes, setting up camp, and disturbing the peace.
Pandemonium!
Pandemonium. More than the creature itself already has, or creepier still, the Men in Black. So let's discuss the Men in Black, as they, like we said before, they kind of make appearances in times of strange occurrences, most especially ones that are considered extraterrestrial. So there really isn't any definitive proof anywhere other than there are some there's some security camera videos.
Yes, there is.
But specifically for this instance, there was really no documentation or no proof other than people saying that they were showing up at people's houses, asking them to be quiet and not discuss the Mothman. It was like a big cover-up.
So that's typically what they're all about. In situations like this, we typically hear of Men in Black after a UFO sighting or after an alien abduction. And then they'll come in and kind of intimidate the witness to give up any videos or any photos or anything that they have. And they supposedly have like a hypnosis factor to them where they say that witnesses who encounter the Men in Black don't remember part of it, or they do things that are out of the ordinary, like they give them things that they wouldn't have. So they're kind of crazy. And then you hear about them in situations like this where it's just some weird sighting or something completely out of the ordinary. Suddenly they'll show up and they're really discreet. You know, they're in and out and they're quick. But there are, like Sam said, some video recordings, like some CCTV cameras. There's some business cameras that see them walking up to desks and talking to people behind the counter.
And they look weird.
They're tall and wear sunglasses and they're pale and kind of that description. I'm getting way off subject. We should honestly just do an episode on the Men in Black. They're really cool.
So they may not have entirely kept this secret in West Virginia, but they definitely prevented any conclusive evidence, if there was any, of the Mothman from leaking out into the public.
So they supposedly showed up in West Virginia and they kind of stopped at people's houses and they were just basically asking them to be quiet about the Mothman and not say anything about their sightings. But I have to ask you, when I was reading through your writing here, I went through and tried to find actual stories of the Men in Black visiting, witness accounts of it. I could not find any. There are no actual witness account stories, but then there are lots of articles stating that they were there. Yeah. So I don't know. It's just really hard to figure out because did you find anything?
No, and that's why it's kind of hard to determine whether it's a real thing or not. Or if it's just like a rumor that started, but like if that's something that came with the retelling of the stories later, or if it was actually occurring with the reports of the stories at the time. You know? If it was just added on later to...
as an embellishment.
Mm-hmm, exactly. That begs the question, was the Mothman a government experiment that they were trying to cover up, or was it something extraterrestrial? We don't know.
It's hard to say.
But several people have claimed experiences that are eerily similar to that, like we talked about.
Eerily similar to what? The Men in Black?
To them showing up after incidents like this.
Oh, people that are not involved in the Mothman.
Yeah, in general.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay. So, yeah, the Men in Black are pretty widespread stories.
So, it's so common a detail. And, obviously, like we said, we don't know whether it's an embellishment that the crazy conspiracy people like us throw in there. Obviously, we don't make stuff up. We just tell what we find. But, some people do. So we don't know if it's actually a real thing, if it's a government agency which is trying to prevent the public from learning the truth about UFOs and other strange things, or they may not even be alien related. We don't know.
This is just simply a report that came from this, or a few reports. So there was sightings in Muscatine and Des Moines? Mm. Interesting.
Yeah, the Des Moines Register in 2016 and WHO News actually covered a story where people were reporting that Men in Black in trench coats were standing along the highway. Some people said that they were just standing there being weird, looking creepy, and other people said that they were stepping out into the roadway trying to stop cars as they drove by.
Or they were teenagers.
Or they were pranking. Who knows? Anyway, back to the Mothman.
Back to the Mothman. There are alternative theories, obviously, which offer a less supernatural and less fun explanation for the sightings. One which we will call the mutant bird theory. According to Chrissy Howard's article for allthat'sinteresting.com, an associate professor of wildlife biology from West Virginia University named Robert L. Smith believed firmly that the sightings were actually a sandhill crane, which stands almost as tall as an average adult man. It was speculated that the crane was perhaps deformed, especially if its home was near the old munitions factory, which is plausible. The bird even has bright red flesh around its eyes, which may be mistaken for the creepy glowing red eyes attributed to the Mothman, as well as the common use of the descriptive feature bird-like. Coincidentally, this isn't the only paranormal report in which this particular bird was blamed for. The Sandhill Crane has also been named as the possible culprit in the Jersey Devil sightings. Things that make you say, I'm not trying to be completely biased, but the Sandhill Crane, which I think is a reasonable culprit, obviously, it's a huge bird.
And it is native to the area.
All over the United States, it sounds like. They're pretty common. I'm not really sure that I'm still buying it. I did look up this bird, and here's why I do think it is reasonable to think that this might be the issue. The wingspan is huge. Probably looks like a dragon flying overhead. So if it's flying in the air, if a person isn't used to seeing a bird so big, it might be easy to mistake it for something unusual.
I can confirm this theory because one time do you remember, I was convinced I saw a goddamn pterodactyl.
I do remember.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
These birds, the sandhill cranes, they have large gray bodies, which also sounds like what is described in Mothman sightings. They also it was described as rolling cries in the source that I was looking at. So that makes sense too. Large, rolling cry. Loud. What is my deal with large and loud today? Apparently the sound is really unique. This bird book that I was looking in, their windpipes are really long and they coil down into their sternum, so they have a really low-pitched, strange sound. It doesn't sound like a normal bird. So I went on the YouTube and I listened to it, and it does sound kind of mousy, I guess. I could see.
So are you going to reenact the noise?
I'm not sure I can effectively do so, but I will play it. I'll play a clip on here, and you guys can decide for yourselves. So there's 2 different clips. The first one will be just them standing in a field, and it's kind of their call back and forth. The second one that I'll play is a more drawn out sound of them in flight, like the sound that they make when they're trying to circle a prey. So there's another reason why I think it's reasonable. They're also an omnivore, so they do eat vegetation, but they also eat meat. So it wouldn't be unreasonable for them to carry off a dog, or a large dog even, because they're pretty big. But here's why I don't really think that it was probably this bird. Apparently they travel in large groups, and it's really not unusual to see big swarms of them flying overhead. So it's not that normal, it doesn't sound like, to see them individually. It said that they group together by the hundreds typically. So that doesn't really mean that it's impossible for one to be alone.
But if it was a mutant deformed one, it might not be claimed by a group.
That's true. That's completely true. Sometimes they get kicked out and they just live their life by themselves. So it sounds much more unlikely to me. Also, most descriptions of the actual Mothman give him a human-like appearance with big muscular legs and standing upright. So I can't imagine a bird being so deformed that it's got big muscular person legs.
Well, and in these accounts, nobody's talking about the beak.
Yeah, and this bird had a huge beak. I mean, it was like a toucan beak.
No.
Well, like a crane.
A crane beak. Nobody's talking about the beak. It will come into play later in the episode, but nobody's specifying beak-like protrusion. They're saying it looks like a man with bird wings.
That's literally what they say. They don't really compare it to a bird unless it's in flight. And then if you see different photos that people have actually caught photos of this thing in the air, and he has big human legs going behind them. So I don't know. If you go by, this reasonable huge bird theory, yeah, I guess so. But if you go by witness accounts and by their photos they've snapped, it looks like no. I just don't. I can't get into it.
Also, Native Americans from the area surrounding Point Pleasant had shared stories of giant birds known to them as Thunderbirds.
Not to be mistaken with the Air Force pilots who do the fancy air show demonstrations, but yes.
So they were capable of swooping down to grab men. So if you were to consider the Native American tales to be the same category, the sightings of the Mothman could go back as far as the 1600s, according to listverse.com's article offering alternative explanations for Mothman encounters. So if you think about it, their interpretation of what they saw as the giant Thunderbird, it could be the same thing. We don't know.
Yeah. Thunderbirds are typically more mythological than anything else because they were kind of a thing of Native American lore. But there's a lot of people who now look back on that lore and think that it may have been a cryptid encounter. Obviously, if they were real creatures back then, it would be hard for them to exist today without being seen because apparently these are like 20-foot wingspans. Have you ever read about the Thunderbirds? They're amazing.
Yeah.
It's so cool. If they were a real creature, unless there are a few left, cough, Mothman. Like maybe they're going extinct and there's just, 1 or 2 left in the world and one happens to reside in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. But some cultures even thought that the Thunderbirds were shapeshifters. So if the Mothman is the same type of situation, maybe that's why he's seen so infrequently and seems intelligent. Maybe he's like a werewolf who is a person by day and a Mothman only when there's certain, like how a werewolf comes out during a full moon? Yeah, maybe a Mothman.
A
A werebird.
So anyway.
Just a thought. On December 15th, 1967, the Silver Bridge, which connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia and Gallipolis, Ohio, suddenly and without warning collapsed and disappeared into the Ohio River. Unfortunately, this disaster occurred during rush hour and resulted in the deaths of 46 people. To add to the chaos, witnesses claim that the Mothman was spotted near the bridge just before it fell. Is it possible that the creature caused the bridge to collapse? That's one theory. It would be a good way to scavenge some nom-noms. Maybe the Mothman's presence at the collapse of the bridge was purely coincidental. But then again, do we actually believe in coincidence? No, we do not.
We do not here at Bigfoot for Breakfast believe that coincidence is a thing.
No. This does seem to have given the poor guy a bad rap. It kind of makes me feel sorry for him. I read a bunch of stories that referred to him as the harbinger of doom. But maybe he's a bad omen. But maybe he's trying to warn folks. Maybe he just is creepy, and so it looks like he's standing there causing the bad thing, but he's really trying to say, hey, this is about to go down.
So before we get into the discussion of what the creature actually is, let's discuss his epic return in 2017.
You didn't say that near.
Epic return!
Yeah, you need to say it more movie announcery. Oh yes, let's do. So I found summaries of these reported sightings on MUFON.com. If you're unfamiliar with MUFON, it's the Mutual UFO Network. So according to MUFON.com, on April 15th and 16th of 2017, 3 separate witnesses reported Mothman sightings over a mere 4-hour time frame in Chicago, Illinois. The first sighting was reported by a couple who were out on Lake Michigan.
It sounds like there was more than 50 total Mothman sightings for the 2017 Chicago incident. But I only did go into a few of them.
I remember that going around in the news and stuff. People were talking about Mothman in Chicago, which isn't that far from Point Pleasant, I guess. So 2 people were out on Lake Michigan, along with 2 other couples celebrating a birthday. This is what the witness reported. Quote, "We were about 2 miles out on the lake, just off of Montrose at about 10 p.m. We were enjoying ourselves when I happened to look up and saw what looked like a giant bat, and not like a fox bat, which I looked up and saw was the biggest bat. This bat was as tall as my husband, who is 6'4", or even bigger. It was solid black with eyes that seemed to reflect the moonlight. This bat was blacker than the surrounding night sky and was perfectly silhouetted against the moonlit sky. This supposed bat circled the boat 3 times in complete silence before heading off toward Montrose. It quickly blended into the night sky and was gone in seconds. Not long after seeing this strange bat creature, the witness also reported having seen a bright green object traveling north to south along the horizon, describing it as follows. It was not a plane, as it was brilliant green and was moving slowly across the horizon. If I had to estimate, it was about 2 miles from our position. After the object was out of sight, we sat there looking around in stunned silence. I began to feel this overwhelming sensation of dread, and told my husband that I felt that it was prudent that we get off the water as quickly as possible. I tried to get a picture of the thing as it circled our boat, but all I got was black."
The second reported sighting that night occurred not 30 minutes later. In this instance, the witness was hanging out with a few friends in Chicago around 10:30 p.m. They report, quote, "As we talked about work and our families, we heard what sounded like a bird flapping its wings. One of my homies yelled out that he saw a huge lechuza over by the road. To clarify, because I also had to look it up, the lechuza is a myth originating in Mexico about an old woman who turns into a giant blackbird." His story continues, "We walked over there and saw what looked like a big owl. As we walked up on it, this owl stood up on 2 feet and looked right at us." Of course, owls only have 2 feet.
Yeah, they do.
I'm just saying what they said. "We saw what looked like a lechuza, except it was about 6 feet tall and really big. It had large, glowing red eyes that were completely freaking everybody out. We yelled at it, and this thing took off into the air and took off toward North Avenue. This thing freaked us all out and scared all of our kids." Again, these witness accounts are from MUFON.com.
At 2:00 a.m. on April 16th, a third witness reported the following. "I arrived at work at 2 a.m. at the Chicago International Produce Market just off of Damon, and as I walked across the parking lot, a bunch of guys, maybe 4 to 5 guys, were staring up at the sky. I looked up and saw the biggest freaking owl I have ever seen. I'm 6'2", and I'm guessing this thing was at least a foot taller than me. It was completely black except for it having bright, yellowish, reddish eyes like a cat. It stood there for a minute or 2 staring at everyone before shooting up into the sky and disappearing. It made everyone feel uneasy and only took off after some guys threw some rocks at it." Sounds like a typical response. Throw some rocks at it.
Well, and the weird thing about describing it as a bird or an owl, dismissing it as that, is that when birds or owls, when they take off, they don't shoot straight up.
No, not typically.
That's not normal.
They fly outward and up. Ascending.
Yeah.
Okay. It made this sound as it took off, and it sounded like a truck's brakes when they're burned out. It flew up and flew a wide circle. making that sound once more and then flew off in the direction of the Stevenson Expressway. We stood around and looked at it for a few minutes, but it never came back. I'm reporting this because there's no way that this was an owl. It stood upright like a man, just really, really tall. I don't want to discuss this with anyone and would prefer to remain anonymous. I don't imagine anyone would believe me anyway. One of the guys that I work with who saw this thing said that it made him feel very uneasy, like a scared kid. And he was glad someone threw a rock and made it fly away. I would imagine seeing a almost 7-foot creature with a huge wingspan and red eyes would make a person feel mildly uneasy.
I saw Jeepers Creepers. Heck yes, it would.
Yeah, it would. I'm after your eyes.
I, for one, am really glad that these people were willing to come forward and report these occurrences. However, thus far, no one was badass enough to shoot it down, damn it.
Okay, why shoot it down, though? This makes me think of those cartoons with the nice misunderstood giant and all the people tie him to the ground with ropes. Like, he hasn't hurt anyone. He did take that guy's dog.
So those weren't apparent, which you would think in Chicago someone would be shooting at it.
They shoot everything, apparently.
Right?
That place is crazy.
Gun-free zone. Those weren't apparently the only people who reported sightings of the flying cryptid that year. According to an article by Robbie Telfer for a Chicago news station, the website Phantoms and Monsters provided witness reports of different sightings at different times that year. In August of 2017, on the 21st of August actually, an anonymous witness reported being at Northerly Island along Chicago's Lake Michigan lakefront. This witness divulged that, quote, "We were watching and observing as the moon began its transit when we heard a very loud scream. This sounded like squeaky truck brakes that squeal when you're pressing hard on them."
That sounds like a pretty common description.
At first, we thought that's what it was. Maybe a CTA bus or a big truck with brakes that needed changing or maintenance. We heard it again. This time, it lasted about 3 seconds, whereas the previous sound was brief. I looked up to see a large object flying low over the docks that stick out into Burnham Harbor from across the water. This object looked like a giant black bat, but also had humanoid features such as pronounced arms and legs.
See, this sound is described as more of a high-pitched sound than a Sandhill Crane. Well, the Sandhill Crane description was abnormally low-pitched. You've heard it. We played it. You know. It doesn't sound like brakes. Anywho, a man known as Jeff chronicled his sighting on October 26, 2017 to the Chicago Reader. He reports that he was near the corner of Morgan at the Fulton Street Market when he saw what he thought was a bird. Quote, "At first I thought it was a bird, but none I'd ever seen before, because it was just so huge and the way it was flapping its wings. The longer I watched it, it was like, what the hell is that thing? It was freaky." End quote.
Although there are a few interesting tales circulated by alleged witnesses of the Mothman, there aren't enough to be terribly convincing, nor are the ones that are out there detailed or documented with any form of conclusive evidence, which leaves the investigation into this cryptid, like most cryptids, ongoing and unresolved. Does that mean that we here at Bigfoot for Breakfast give up the hope for answers? No, it does not.
No, it does not.
What it means is that we are left to our own devices in the search for answers in our quest for the truth about this winged creature. Anyone familiar with us knows that when we are left to our own devices, things get weird. So what is it? Is it really a giant moth with humanoid features? And nobody ever described it as moth-looking.
No, they didn't.
Was it created in nature or by man? A top-secret government conspiracy, perhaps? That would explain the presence of the mysterious men in black cleaning up after its public debut. But where were the men in black for the 2017 sightings? Lurking in the shadows, maybe?
Just watching what's going on. I read in a LiveScience.com article that there were rumors of creatures that resembled the Mothman spotted before the Chernobyl and Fukushima disasters. So, is it coincidence that this guy shows up right before these tragic, large-scale disasters occur? Could Mothman be a demonic harbinger of death? If not to bring death, perhaps to warn people of disasters to come. Apparently not very effectively if that's the case. They're not listening. They're so focused on what they saw. They're not like, what could this bring? Next time I see something insane, I'm just going to assume it's a bad omen and I should watch my ass.
We talked about this in the reading signs from the universe thing in the last episode. We talked about it.
Yep.
Let's face it, dude. It's aliens.
Maybe.
The fact that the men in black showed up making threatening inquisitions, just like they do at UFO sightings or alien encounter stories, can drag you pretty far into the direction of believing there's a strong possibility that the Mothman may be some kind of alien.
And I would feel better about that if we had found any actual witness accounts of men in black being present.
That's true.
But since it seems like it's such an afterthought, like, oh yeah, and there was men in black also. I don't know. I think that had there been anyone that said that they actually visited them, made them feel uneasy, I would be more convinced, but I really am not. I lean more toward this top secret government experiment direction. If you think about it, Point Pleasant is relatively close to some military installations. Most of them are on the surface National Guard stations. However, that may be a cover. This area would be the perfect place to do such experiments, quiet, relatively secluded, the perfect place to conduct secret gene splicing experiments if you ask me. But, of course, not very many people do ask me, and probably for good reason. You know where they do go for information, though. The Mothman Museum. Yep, there's one of those. The world's only Mothman Museum is located in none other than Point Pleasant, West Virginia. I would love to tell you to go check it out, but as of right now, the museum is closed due to the COVID-19 outbreak. The museum boasts the largest collection of props and memorabilia from the movie The Mothman Prophecies, as well as rare historical press clippings and photographs of the Silver Bridge disaster, and other documentation regarding the man, the moth, the legend. See what I did there?
Yeah. Cool. You can also check out the Mothman Freakin Festival, which takes place on September 19th and 20th of 2020, COVID willing. Mothman Festival is an annual gathering commemorating the visit of the mysterious entity every year on the third weekend in September, and upwards of 15,000 people flood the streets of Point Pleasant to indulge and celebrate all things Mothman.
And probably other stuff.
Make sure you practice good social distancing, people. If that's too much social interaction for you, there is a 24-hour live stream video of the Mothman statue that you can access from the mothmanmuseum.com if that's something that you're interested in.
So there's a video where you can just look at the statue?
Mm-hmm.
What would be happening?
That you could watch people like pick their butts and stuff because they don't know they're on camera.
I see. I thought you meant like an up close of his face or something. And I was like, does
just...
it change or?
It's a camera that focuses on like a city block view with the statue in the center.
Okay. That makes more sense to me. I thought maybe they were watching for supernatural changes in the concrete.
I don't know if it's a concrete or a metal statue. So since we're on the subject of Mothman and festivals, I wanted to share a story that I read on the interwebs. I can't recall where I read it or the source, so if you know, then let me know and I'll give credit where credit is due. And I don't know if there's any truth to it, but deep down in my black little soul, I hope it's true. So this guy who was working at a music festival as a paramedic, they got called to a guy who was super high on acid and had climbed on top of one of the stadium lights. So he's 20 feet in the air on this light pole, staring into the solar level light, screaming, "I am a moth, go into the flame." So the guy goes on to describe that he and the firefighters are spending like 30 minutes standing around at the base of this light pole discussing how the heck they're going to get this guy down. So this raggedy janitor walks up, turns off the power to the generator, and turns on his flashlight. He aims the flashlight at the Mothman. Mothman follows the light all the way down to the ground, following it straight into the medical tent. And it's genius, and I freaking hope this is real.
He probably knows this guy and does it all the time.
Not all heroes wear capes, but they should all carry flashlights.
That's no joke.
That is so funny. I really hope that was a true story.
It makes me think of, I am a golden god. I'm on drugs.
I dig music.
I love it.
I'm on drugs.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal, providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.
Okay, so also on the subject of festivals, there's another cryptid with a festival, and its home base is right here in our home state, in Dallas County along the Raccoon River, with estimated population of slightly less than 2,000 residents. Van Meter, Iowa, was established in the year 1869. On September 29th of 1903, the otherwise uneventful small town was rocked by a rather peculiar tale told by a local tool dealer by the name of U.G. Griffith. According to an article by Brent Swanser for MysteriousUniverse.org, it was a little after midnight and he was on his way home from a long day of work when he noticed what appeared to be a spotlight emanating from the top of a building nearby. Being familiar with the area and its surroundings, he knew that this was not normal. So instead of going home, he drove on toward the peculiar light shining in the distance. As he got closer, the light suddenly jumped across the street to another rooftop, as if its source had flown through the air, and then it jumped again, disappearing into the night, leaving Mr. Griffith dumbfounded.
He shared his story the next day, and because he was a well-respected member of the community, his story was not dismissed as nonsense. Even if his story had been dismissed, he would have been vindicated by other accounts which occurred that very night, as Dr. Alcott proclaimed to have had a similar but much more dramatic experience. He was awoken by a bright beam of light that was shining right in his face. The light poured into his room from a nearby window. Startled awake, he jumped out of bed and ran outside to investigate, grabbing his gun on the way out in case it was trespassers. Rather than some whippersnapper hooligans pranking him, his eyes met a tall, humanoid form attached to bat-like wings. Also, a single horn atop its head, which apparently is where the blinding light was coming from. Weird.
Totally weird. So, old Doc Alcott, he fired off 5 rounds at the creature, which didn't really seem to faze it in the slightest. It just stood there, lurking in the darkness. The doctor managed to make it back into the house, locking the doors behind him. When he looked out the window, the creature was gone. Again, as a well-respected member of the community, his story was received by those with whom he shared it, with little doubt as to whether it was truthful. So, between the doctor and the tool dealer peddling their tales of strange lights and winged beasts, the rumors of a supernatural or otherworldly being prowling about the area began to spread, and the incredible nature of the tales would only continue to grow. The following morning, October 1st, the manager of the bank, Clarence Dunn, walked into the bank to check up on things, thinking that the recent strange sightings may have been robbers. When he arrived at the bank at approximately 1 a.m., he settled in with a shotgun that he brought just in case. So there he sat, waiting for something strange to happen, and he would not be disappointed. He heard a strange sound coming from the outside, which he thought sounded like a person gasping for air or being strangled. Suddenly, a beam of light sliced through the darkness, and he could see that it was coming from a shadowy figure that was creeping outside.
Do the creep. Ah.
Right? Without a thought, he fired his weapon at the beast, which once again disappeared into the night. He was certain that he'd hit it. But when he searched the area, he found no evidence of it. There was no blood or anything.
He did, however, find some strange-looking footprints. From what he described, the prints had only 3 toes, and it's said that they made some plaster casts of the footprints, but the current whereabouts of these casts are unknown. Man, wouldn't that be cool to see?
I wonder if the Mothman, just like from one of his scared people that were running from him, if one of them maybe dropped a headlamp and he thought, well, I'll use that. I got this.
That is possible.
That's what I
The
imagine.
Mothman just put on a headlamp.
Yep.
What about the unicorn?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's dark out. A candle headlamp? I don't know.
Or maybe he just stuck the flashlight where he needed it, I guess.
I'm going to put this here. It means hello in Mothman. Hey, hey. Hey, girl, hey.
Hey, well, in, what movie was it? Independence Day, they were using lights to signal, their friendly welcome message to the aliens.
Yeah.
And then they got blown up. But maybe lights aren't the best method of communication, guys.
Well, he put it on his forehead and then he got shot.
Right.
I mean, maybe it isn't. You're right. So that's not all, folks. For the very next evening, the local hardware shop owner, O.V. White, was awoken from his sleep to the shrill sound of an unearthly wail. It's always unearthly. He described the sound as similar to the scraping of sheets of metal. Because all of the other stories flying around, he had been keeping his gun close at hand. He grabbed it and looked out the window to find the source of the noise. A mere 15 feet away, he saw a dark figure perched on top of a telephone pole. Being the gun-toting American that he is, he fired a shot at the crouching creature, and it appeared that he nailed it. Instead of plummeting off the pole, though, the beast snapped its head in his direction. Ooh, that would be horrible.
Right? Stop looking at me, Swan.
So it turned and looked at him as if it was annoyed by his attempt. The air around Mr. White was swiftly poisoned with a horrific stench.
He has a nervous tummy.
He got nervous.
It scared him and he pooped.
Oh my goodness. It was so potent that he became dizzy and gradually lost consciousness.
This kind of reminds me of, like, did you ever watch Brad do the gargoyle pose on the chair? When he jumps up on the chair and he's squatting and then he farts?
No, but from now on, I'm going to make him do it and we're putting it on Facebook.
You don't want him to do it.
I've never seen this out of Brad.
The smell that follows is horrific. He's Mothmanning.
Yep, he is. Okay, so anybody who puts up a photo of them Mothmanning on our Facebook site gets an entry into our free contest in which they win a cup or a t-shirt.
So it's like the owling challenge.
Yep.
Except it's Mothmanning.
So
or actually it would be Van Meter Visitoring, but that doesn't have the same ring to it.
Do anything that is similar to you doing an impression of the Van Meter Visitor or Mothman.
And you have to have a blanket for wings.
Or a towel, whatever.
Something.
Do what you gotta do. You can improvise.
Make
but
this happen.
We already have a contest going on, and we haven't told you about that yet in this episode. We usually put that in the beginning. So if you share our podcast on anything, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, then you get an entry into the contest. The more times you share it, the more entries you get. Also now we're going to add to it, if you do a Mothmanning pose, you are also entered into the contest. So put one of those on our Facebook page and we'll see who wins it.
I love it.
I love it too.
Clear the stenchy air here.
Yep.
So the brouhaha of Mr. White's incident woke the store's co-owner, Sidney Gregg, who also came out to inspect the strange goings-on. To his horror, he also came to find the crouching creature atop the telephone pole. But to make matters more terrifying, the bat creature was using a large parrot-like beak to climb down the pole. So now there's a beak.
For real. Hellbird.
Its feet met the ground, its legs described by Gregg as resembling those of a kangaroo, and it stood to a towering 8 feet in height, forehead discharging a powerful beam of light.
Headlamp.
The creature appeared to look around, checking its surroundings before bounding forward and bursting into the air with the flapping of its giant bat-like wings. So, did he smell the stank when he came outside? Because it didn't mention it in his story. I wonder if it dissipated that quickly, or if he just didn't notice it, or he didn't know the smell was related.
Wait a second. Hold on. What?
The smell.
Yeah, but the way you just told the story, he smelled the smell after he shot the gun and the creature whipped around to look.
Guy. The other guy passed out, and then the co-owner came out after hearing the whole incident, because obviously he fired a shot off.
Yeah.
And
That'll do it. That'll make people wonder what's up.
I wonder if he smelled the smell. Or if he found the guy. Did he find his guy passed out? It doesn't say.
I don't know. You read this story, man. What happened?
I want to know the end. I feel like
you don't have any closure on that one.
And so then it flies off. I honestly feel like I'd have to chase it down. You just have to. You'd have to find out where it's going. It's a big beam of light. Surely you can follow it.
Mm-hmm. So the saga then continues with yet another story from the tile and brick factory manager, J.L. Pratt Jr. Once again, it was around 1 a.m. on October 3rd when Platt heard some strange noises from a nearby abandoned coal mine. He was quoted as describing the sound as follows. Quote, like Satan and a regiment of imps were coming forth for a battle. Dang. So naturally, he went to investigate the strange noise, as they all do, as most of us would. And like Mr. Platt, we too would end up face to face with a giant bat-winged humanoid at the entrance of the abandoned coal mine. The perfect setting for a monster movie massacre. Can't beat that. See you in Valhalla. It's a duel.
Skull. Only this time the creature isn't alone. It's accompanied by what appears to be a smaller member of the same unknown species, both of which beamed light from their horny heads.
Don't say that.
Horned heads?
Horned.
Horned heads.
Horned heads. There you go.
Team Monster Mash once again disappeared, flying off into the darkness.
After this sighting, the rumors spread like wildfire. And the abandoned mines were now the presumed lair of the now multiple monstrosities that had been repeatedly spotted lurking about the town. If you think about it, the deep tunnels and caverns of a coal mine would be the perfect refuge for something or someone who wanted to stay hidden. But apparently, they didn't do a very good job, because he wondered what was going on out there and he kept lurking around.
Well, I got this flashlight. I gotta use it.
Right? So naturally, the small town people did what people do and assembled a posse to set up base at the entrance of the mine and wait for the beasts to return. With them, an arsenal of weapons. We got that pitchfork and torch mentality going on here.
This is Iowa. We got some boomsticks.
It's Iowa. We got this.
As luck would have it, surprise, surprise, around 1 a.m., they did in fact return, glowing horns and all. Probably, to their surprise, they were fired upon quite heavily without hesitation. But once again, this didn't seem to bother them at all. The report of this incident in the local paper described the incident like this. Quote, "The reception they received would have sunk the Spanish fleet, but aside from unearthly noise and peculiar odor, they did not seem to mind it, but slowly descended the shaft of the old mine."
They means the creature. So he came up out of the hole. They shot at it. A whole
No,
bunch.
they didn't come out of the hole. They came back to the hole.
Okay, so they set up shop around the hole, correct? And they witnessed the creature coming back to the hole from somewhere else?
Yeah.
And then he just went on down despite all the gunfire?
Yep.
Okay.
Both
what
the
I was thinking.
creatures.
There was two.
Yes, the small one and the big one.
Oh. What have I missed that?
Yeah, you did.
After the incident, the entrance of the old coal mine was, of course, barricaded. This was apparently the last sighting of the Van Meter creature, but the Van Meter creatures, but the legacy is forever. Legends never die. The stories have been told and retold over the years, and the newspaper reports were kept in scrapbooks to help keep it alive. The town's centennial book even has an entry documenting the creatures. Even though there's no conclusive proof that any of these incidents actually occurred, aside from the possible casts of the three-toed feet that are missing, but we cryptid lovers never let things like that get in the way. Most importantly, let's get back to the Van Meter Visitor Festival.
How is it that we have never actually gone to this?
I actually just heard about it. I didn't even know it was a thing.
Well, they only started it in 2013.
Okay.
But I'm really disappointed in us because it's really not that far away.
No, so we will be going this year.
The festival is scheduled to take place on September 26th of this year, I believe, provided the whole lockdown thing doesn't carry on that long. The festival features guided walking tours, movies, music, games, public speakers, and nom-noms, according to TravelIowa.com. They do have a Facebook page, and you should follow them. I do. Join me.
Join us. Come to the festival with us. Anyway, we combine these two cryptids partially because of their similarities. The features of the creature described in the Van Meter case are pretty similar to those described in the cases of the Mothman, in both the original West Virginia sightings and the more recent Chicago sightings. The Van Meter visitor has been considered by some to be a type of proto-Mothman event because it happened 60 years prior to the events in Point Pleasant.
So maybe they decided that the lights were...
Like he decided the headlamp was getting in the way, freaking people out.
Yep.
It was a bit too much. Like he's already too much to begin with.
Yes, friends, Iowa saw it first.
We seen it first.
And ours was a unicorn.
A lighted unicorn.
I wonder if they met in battle, who would win?
Do you think Mothman would just be so fixated on the horn lamp it wouldn't be able to fight?
Moths do love lamps.
Well, like they have what's those things they used back in the day that the grandmas all had that was like a light and the bug zapper.
The zapper?
Yeah. It would just attract the Mothman and then the Van Meter creature could just whoop his ass.
Just ask the musical festival guy. Lamps!
So let's ponder this. Both creatures in their descriptions were likened to bats or birds. So why wasn't he Batman or bird guy?
Bird fellow.
Bird fellow.
That sounds much more distinguished. Oh, there's that bird fellow. Oh, that sounds like Iowa.
Oh. It does sound like the most common explanation by skeptics for these occurrences is that the sightings were just of large owls or other birds. There are big owls in Iowa. There were similar stories in Cornwall in the 1970s where people had reported seeing what they described as a large bird man. From what I could find, two young girls, June and Vicky Melling, were on vacation and they saw a large winged creature hovering above the tower in St. Monin and St. Stephen's Church on April 17th, 1976. Wikipedia says that the girls were so shaken by the large feathered bird man that their father, Don, promptly cut the family trip short after hearing their story. It sounds like the sightings occurred again in July that same year by two other girls, Sally Chapman and Barbara Perry, who said that the man-sized owl had glowing eyes, pincer-like claws, and pointy ears.
So what do you think? Alien? Owl? Bird? Mutant bird? Angel? Demon? Gargoyle?
Headlamp?
Government gene splicing experiment? X-Man? Or just a naturally occurring cryptid creature who managed to stay hidden from the world for the most part? An interdimensional being? A fairy? A secret military flying machine? A costumed man? A hoax? The possibilities are really pretty vast.
And endless. Okay, so that's it. Thank you for checking out today's episode of Bigfoot for Breakfast. We do hope you enjoyed listening, and please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on whichever app you listen from, and please leave us a rating and a review. Hunt us down on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and follow us.
Hunt us down like a bird fellow.
Right? We're so fun. We are so fun.
We are fun.
Send us a message. You can email us at bigfootforbreakfast@outlook.com, or you can call our voicemail and leave us a message. The number there is 641-812-2635. We love getting feedback on what you love about the show and what you want to hear and what you think we can do better. If you have any cool stories, we'd love to hear those too. Once again, thank you so much for being here with us. Please come again. Stay safe, stay socially distant, get plenty of sunshine, and for goodness sake, cross your fingers that we are able to go to cryptid festivals this year.
Join us.
Yes, do. But until then, we out.
Bird fellow.
Come at me, bro.